So many Disney and particularly kids films in the past few weeks. What can I do? I've got it! Saw! Hi, my name's Drew and welcome to another review video on Flying Wiener. As announced last week, I'm trying to do some non-Disney stuff for a while just to shake the impression that I'm going to focus on Disney stuff. That was pure coincidence, by the way. It was just what I felt like watching. Generally speaking, I only watch what I really feel like at the moment, so it's all random really. Anyway, Saw. The reason I chose this film was because a very kind YouTuber decided to give me a shout out, which I feel very honoured by. It's a rather strange feeling when you do these things. You hope that people end up watching your videos. It gets a bit bizarre when people actually start reacting to your videos, or in this case taking it to another level where you actually get a shout out from another channel, which is a lot bigger than your own one. The channel I'm talking about is Cypher's Movie Talks, and it's a very nice guy. He comments on videos of mine. I go and watch his reviews as well. It focuses, as the name implies, a lot on sci-fi, but you've got some gaming content there as well, and all sorts of other films. The shout out I got was for Ready Player One, which you may know I did a review on. I'll leave two links up here. The first one will be for my own video on Ready Player One, and the second one right after that, which I hope will be popping up right now, it's a bit of a delay, will be Cypher's Movie Talks version on that film. And I will also leave a big link at the end of the review where the image pops up. I'll directly put a link to Cypher's Movie Talks review there. Thank you again so much for the shout out. I hope we continue this lovely community on YouTube. I am quite enjoying it. People who just love discussing films. It's something that I hoped for when I first started talking about films here. So with that being said, let's focus on Saw. And Cypher's Movie Talks actually did a review on each of the Saw films. Now you may not know, but there are 8 in total at the moment. There are further planned actually and about to come out. One of them was delayed only because of the pandemic, but if you are interested in a review for every single one of the Saw films, you can find it on Cypher's Movie Talks. So the first Saw film, full disclosure, I have only seen the first 3 films, so Saw 1, 2, 3. Then you've got 4, 5, 6. Then the 7th one was called Saw 3D, and the 8th one was called Jigsaw. Just to give you the full picture, I have only seen the first 3. And the first one I actually consider to be somewhat of a modern classic, really. I saw it back then in the cinema when it came out in 2004, and I just loved it from start to finish. I thought there was so much about it that really made it stand out to me. And considering it's nearly 20 years old, I feel that it still holds up really, really well. There are issues with the film that I now discover upon rewatching it. We'll talk about them as well, of course, but generally speaking, I really, really like the concept that this film puts forward. To give you a brief overview of the plot, without of course spoiling too much, we start the film with 2 guys. They wake up in this horrible, horrible bathroom you would not want to be found dead in, really. But anyway, they find themselves waking up in this bathroom. They don't know how they got there. They don't know what's happened to them, why they're there. They've both got chains on the legs. They're chained to the walls. They have got no clue what's going on. The only clue they've got is in the middle of the room between them lies a man who is dead in a huge pool of blood, and he's holding a cassette player and a gun. And they then on themselves find 2 wee mini tapes that each say "Play Me." What's happening here is you've got a guy, a serial killer we'll call him, technicality really, but the name of the guy is Jigsaw, and what he does is he devises games that he forcefully puts people into in the hopes of making them appreciate their life once more or again or what have you. So he selects people he feels aren't really living their life to their fullest. They're not grateful for being alive at all, and he forces them to do things that are against their very own nature, really violent, gruesome things at times, to not only survive, but as I say, his goal is to make them appreciate life. And as you can imagine, or I suppose even if you have not seen the films, at some point probably you will have got a snippet of a film of what it's about, etc. It turns into very, very gruesome games that he devises. It's all borderline torture, really, or outright torture. Although I do say, and I must stress this, I feel that the first film is very, very different to what happened afterwards. Although I've only seen the next two ones after the first one, I do believe that the rest just sort of turns into more of this so-called torture porn. What makes Jigsaw interesting, apart from this really, really unique motive, typically a serial killer wants to kill people. And okay, that's why I'm saying it's a technicality. First of all, his aim is not to kill people. He does not want to kill people. He wants to make them go through an experience to better themselves. That's the one thing. The second thing is he devises these games and puts them in there. So technically speaking, they kill themselves if they fail the game. That's how it typically happens. He does not step in and actually kill anyone. That's why I said it's a technicality. But yeah, we'll just say he's a serial killer, because ultimately that's the best way to describe what's going on. And I really like this unique approach. It was very, very well done. The two people who came up with the story are James Wan, who is the director, and the person who wrote the actual script, which was Lee Wannell. He also plays one of the two main roles. He plays Adam, the younger guy of the two who wake up. And they did this all on their own. It's actually quite fascinating to look into this. I myself have got the US director's cut, which you briefly saw in the intro. I hope this would be the same anywhere else you purchase it in the world. I like the white Blu-ray casing, by the way, but what was most fascinating about it is a lot of extras on it, and they show you how the film was made, how these two guys, they spent $5,000 of their own money to make a wee short film where they just took one scene and turned it into as high of a production as they could in order to get traction for the film and get funding for it. And they succeeded very, very well. And the short is on the DVD. It's the first time I saw it when I saw just yesterday. And it's fascinating to see it. It is of really, really high production. Hard to believe that they only needed $5,000 to make it. But I can see why Lionsgate immediately decided they want to fund this. So ultimately they had a budget of $1.2 million, which to them was of course a lot of money. But you do have to say that looking at the film as a whole, you can tell that the budget was very, very restricted, considering that they had all sorts of sets and effects going on. You can tell at times. That is one of the criticisms I have, that at times you can tell that you're on a set. There's just something that feels a bit off about it, particularly the bathroom that they are in. Just feels a bit off. But again, upon watching the specials, I found out that this actually made it necessary for them to be very creative and inventive, because their resources were just limited. So we're not just talking about the sets, we're talking about lighting, we're talking about editing, all sorts of things were done to make this film as quickly as possible, and it took them only 18 days to film the whole thing, which is quite incredible because it does not all take place in the bathroom. You've got flashbacks going on, ultimately exploring how we arrived at the bathroom, where the characters came from, etc. And all that is shown as well. Then you've got actors involved. You have got Carrie Elwes, then you've got Danny Glover, so you've got quite big names. You've got Keith Leung as well. So these are people we know from many, many other things, of course. And so I feel that with the budget they had, they did quite a lot. And probably the most striking thing about it is, in most cases, they only had 1, 2, or at most 3 takes per scene, and that was it. That was absolutely it. And considering that, I think it is a really great achievement here, because I will say that at times the acting, and I would single out Carrie Elwes with this, at times it is not quite believable. It is even nearly silly at times. So you've got a very dramatic scene, something really, really shocking happens, and you feel that the gravity is not quite there with the characters. You know, they're not taking it exactly as serious as they actually should. But again, I would rather blame, instead of the acting itself, I would rather blame it on just having 1 or 2 takes. I mean, that is quite a lot, and the scenes are very intense. There's a lot going on, and so I get that this really limited it. So I will forgive them for it, but still, as this is a review, I do have to mention that. So the editing itself, it's very hectic at times. It was seemingly to gloss over various things that would have been noticeable or would have become noticeable if the camera would have stayed too long on one scene as it was. And so I appreciate that as well. I just feel that at times it gets a bit in the way because it's a bit too much slightly, and you have got scenes where we see some other victims of Jigsaw and the traps they were in, and then you get this, it's all sped up and the camera is slowed down. So they play around a lot with speed and motion direction. The camera moves around a bit. I actually quite like these scenes. At times it can get a bit much, but generally speaking, I enjoy it because it really puts you in the shoes of the victims, and you feel very stressed because you're watching them really literally run around frantically to get out of their cage or trap or whatever it is. Music goes very well with this too, although as a sort of side note to the music, I will say that at least on this Blu-ray the volume was all over the place. It was really horrible, so you'd have some sudden actiony thing happen, a sudden loud noise, and then literally next second people might be talking and you could hardly hear them. So the volume balance was really horrible. I hate it when that is done. I can't say if this is generally the film or if it's just the cut I've got here. I don't know. I can't say. It's just that it really impacted my viewing pleasure because I was sitting there. I hate when you have to sit with the remote control and keep turning up and down again. But yes, but the music, generally speaking, is really good. It's got this sort of industrial vibe. I like industrial metal. And one of the best things about it is one of my favourite bands of all time, Fear Factory, is even on the soundtrack. And not just that, they have got a music video that is even on this DVD, which to me as a fan was just brilliant. I mean, you watch a film that you like, and then you go into the extras and you discover a snippet that really speaks to you as a fan of something completely different. It was so so surprising, particularly because the song itself was not used in the film, but so I didn't realise they were on the soundtrack. But really great. By the way, if you want to talk about Fear Factory, all that down in the comments, I am very happy to do that. New album coming out soon. Yeah, so the industrial music, and I will mention particularly the Jigsaw theme. You hear it very strongly at the end of the film. I really like that. I think that's very poignant and very well known too. One other point where I feel like the film lets you down a bit is the story itself. It's a lot of back and forth. So far we're exploring why these two guys are there. Parallel to that, we are seeing the police investigation. Obviously, as you can imagine, something like this would draw a lot of attention and the police would obviously be investigating it. So we see that as well, which generally is fine, and I get it, it really expands the story. It might have been a bit too much to have just the two guys in the bathroom. Not sure about that, but I just feel that the balance is not quite there. Although the majority is in the bathroom, there are some scenes outside of it where I felt it wasn't really necessary to go there. It took away from time that we could have spent with the two guys analysing or just getting to see them do more in there. So while the script is very good, and again remembering that these two guys, young guys, it was the first time for them doing this, utterly amazing achievement, I would say. And one thing that the story does very well, it's got one of the best twists I have ever seen. When I remember sitting in the cinema when my jaw dropped, because it seems to stare you in the face the whole film, and then when it happens you're still just so surprised when it does. So good, really so good. And after listening and watching the extras, it's pretty much the first thing they came up with, and then they developed the whole story around it, and I think it's utterly brilliant. It really is so good. One main thing that I think would turn people off from Saw would be that they expect it to be a really gruesome, horrific film, and this is what you can probably say about all of the ones that came after this, at least for 2 and 3 definitely, because they go into that a lot more. But the first one I feel does a lot to not be gruesome and not be so graphic, really. I would assume that it's got a lot to do with the budget restrictions that they have, so quite a lot of the most gruesome things are left to your imagination. The camera does not show you them, so that is done very well. Typically in horror, it usually works best when your mind is doing all the work for you, because you can most of the times come up with something that's a lot more horrible than what you would see on screen. But like I say, this film of course it is graphic, but like I say, many of the really bad things you don't actually see, so it's more how people react to it, and you don't actually see it all the time. I really like that. I like that about this film, because it should not be about how gruesome somebody is tortured or something like that. This film, and it focuses on the morality of it. So how far do you go to save yourself? And are you willing to harm others by doing that? Are you willing to harm yourself? Is that justified when you harm others? You know, and all these things. I really love this aspect. And like I say, the just nature of Jigsaw himself, I think it's really intelligent, and that's what the film focuses on. So I would say that if you're a bit unsure about whether to watch it because it might be too graphic, I'd say definitely give it a try, because I would like to say that it's not as graphic as you expect it to be, or as you may know from clips that you have seen from the ones that come after, because they are certainly more graphic in detail. So this is a very high recommendation for me. I'm a bit saddened that at the time it only got mixed reviews, really. I don't understand it. I think it's a very original concept. I think the execution is brilliant when you consider the low budget that they had. There's so many things that work so well in this film. And to think that this is the guy, James Wan, who went on to do Aquaman of all things, and obviously a lot of other horror films. But I think that's just brilliant to watch him here in his feature film debut. I'll thank you for watching. I'll thank Cypher's Movie Talks again for the shout out, and just to remind you, at the end of this film you will have a link to the review of the first Saw film on that channel, as well as you'll be able to see all the other Saw films if you're interested in how it goes on from this point. If you enjoyed, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel for more review videos. As you see, it's not all just Disney. And I will see you on the next one on Flying Wiener. Take care. Bye.